Today we're going to take a look at the front friction damper. In fact, it's this thing right here. Quite a weird, curious looking thing. On normal Austin 7s, it's not usually visible because there's the registration plate in front of this thing. But this is the front friction damper. Its function is to sort of slow down the bounciness of the leaf springs. Let's say you hit a bump and it bounces up. If it bounced down at the same speed, it will go boom, boom, boom. What this does is it sort of adds a dampening to the whole approach to make it less bouncy like a kangaroo. Funnily enough, the first Austin 7s didn't even have friction dampers. Up to 1924, I think, no friction dampers, and then this bit of metal was plonked on the front of the chassis to be able to bolt this thing onto it, very much an afterthought. And then this would connect to the front cross member via these little things and basically add a bit of, you know, dampening and control to the whole setup. This thing on the front of this friction damper is a funky looking spring, and on the inside there's pads that basically add friction to these metal arms. Some of them made of fibrous material, possibly even with some asbestos in it, but the ones in here actually are wooden ones. So we'll take this apart. So it's rubbing on this central piece. So this is the central kind of casing, and then yeah, it's got this pad that is basically, I think, a bit of beech that has been soaked in oil. Oops, I've just cracked it. Talon? Yeah, something like that. And then it comes to pieces. You've got the left side, and then that's sandwiched in the inside of the right side. So it's very much kind of like a bodge job afterthought, this design, interestingly enough. This is not what a modern damper really looks like. I mean, I don't even know what modern dampers look like, but I know that after this, then you came with this thing, you kind of recognize this, sometimes with the spring around it. But for instance, this one, it's got some oil in there and you're trying to squeeze it through a little hole. Oh, that kind of adds a bit of slowing motion to the whole setup. And you recognise these from any cars after, I don't know, the late 1940s. But there is a load of different types of dampers. A lot of the pre-war cars, of course, had things that looked like this. There was fancier ones, there was not so fancier ones, all different shapes and sizes, but they all looked reasonably similar. And also others like this one, which is called a Rotoflow, actually has uncured rubber inside of it. So it's basically just a bunch of gooey, half-set slime inside it that sort of slows the motion. This is very much dried out now, so it needs a bit of work. I actually bought these with a plan of putting these on, but what I didn't realise was this is about 2 times the weight of this, and you need 2 of these. So yeah, that's a bit silly. But these were sort of designed as replacements for friction dampers, so you could plonk these on and get a better ride. For instance, I've got this advert here, and well, I'll read it out to you. Who knows when you will take delivery of that new car? There's a picture of somebody dreaming of a nice new shiny car. One thing is certain, your present one is a precious possession, and you will want to do everything possible to lengthen its life. Rotoflow shocks, with their exclusive pressure flow principle, their constant cushion action can help you there. Rotoflow not only increase riding comfort, they minimise wear of road springs and guard the whole chassis and body against the aging effect of road shocks. Once fitted and correctly adjusted, Rotoflow need no topping up and work at a maximum efficiency without any attention at all. Rotoflow can be fitted to most cars from 8 horsepower and to light and heavy commercials. Ask your garage man today to send your old shock absorbers with linkages to his local Rotoflow main distributor, who will fit Rotoflow in under half an hour if necessary. There's a bunch of different models depending how big the car is. This one I've got right here looks to be the A1 for cars up to 12 horsepower, where 2.5 bolt hole centers are required. Interesting. So I've got a couple of these, and apparently the best thing to put in here if you haven't got vulcanized rubber is just kitchen sealant. So you squirt a bunch of kitchen sealant in there, pop it in, let it dry, and it basically acts like the unvulcanized rubber. But yeah, there's a serious amount of weight here. Who knows, these might end up on the back of the car. We'll have to wait and see. Also, if you remember in the last video when we popped in the Boudreau independent suspension, there was actually another item, a Boudreau kind of shock absorber setup that went really high behind the radiator, then had more of the conventional telescopic dampers on the sides. But this yet again is a very heavy solution, probably even heavier than this solution. But apparently from what I've heard, when these are kind of set up nicely and they're nice and fresh, and they've got nice and fresh friction dampers, do a perfectly adequate job of dampening the whole setup. However, because nothing's ever easy, there is a little bit of a problem with the kind of standard friction damper. The issue is the friction damper is in the center and being shared by both sides. That means if the friction is pushing this one up, it's also trying to push this one down a little bit. So ultimately these are inherently connected in the opposite manner. So this side is somewhat influencing the other side. And even with standard Austin 7 suspension, it is recommended to either fix one of these, so only one of them is working, or split it in half and have 2 separate sets of springs either side next to each other. Funnily enough, you can actually buy brand new ones of these friction dampers. For instance, this 160 quid and a bit of bling for even a standard Austin 7. But that isn't going to work in our instance because the issue we have is this fixed to the standard cross member around halfway through, which is about here. But we need to actually bolt the end of this right over here. You'll see a problem here, it's not actually long enough. One solution I've seen people doing is using a set of the rear friction damper arms because they actually happen to be pretty much the right size to be bolted onto the outside. So we're basically using this mount, and we got this, we've got the springs and whatnot, and that fits right there. But that's still got the same problem of these being interlinked. So what we're gonna do is make a custom kind of mount that sits about here, that's got 2 holes, so we can have the 2 shorter arms like this, being connected by their own springs. I think it might look pretty cool. Now we could basically make it much like this one with a bit of steel, but then I thought, wait a second, I've got a milling machine. I don't know how the fudge to use the milling machine, so why don't I try and make it with the milling machine out of a big old chunk of billet aluminium? That's right, we're gonna make this mount out of a big old chunk of aluminium. It's gonna be an expensive mistake if it doesn't work because this was 30 quid, but let's give it a go. Let's give it a go, shall we? So let's talk shop. We've got 730 millimeters, and now I'm gonna be bouncing between kind of imperial and metric as we go because I don't really know either of them if I'm honest. So that's from this hole over to this hole on the side where the wheels are. Here's the wheels. There's the axle bits, and then the like arms, this point over to this point is 200 from center to center is 200. Oh, I'm left-handed, you can't see what I'm doing. 255 millimeters. So we got, not meters, millimeters. So we got that 255. So 255 plus 255, quick maths, that's 510. So the space between here and here is 510, which is those two together, taken away from that, which is 22. Sorry, 220, not 22 centimeters. So 222 millimeters between this hole and this hole. Might not be big enough. I'm right on the cusp. Oh, this is going to be massive. So yeah, it's basically, this is bang on. It's basically all gonna fit like this. I ain't got the foggiest one I'm doing, but that's gonna be the top because we're actually going for the top. So we're gonna turn it upside down. That's not gonna hold, is it? I'm gonna try and just hold it. It's probably better side clamps. I'm only using what came with it. If somebody knows better side clamps that clamp it in without going over the top, please can you comment below what the fudge they're called. Oh, I love this. It's like an Etch-a-Sketch. It's like a massive old Etch-a-Sketch, but instead of chopping, you're cutting. And it's also a bit of a workout, which I kind of like. Oh, come on, get to the front. So we're trying to get this line to go up onto the edge. That goes like that. And now we go from left to right and see how much that goes up. So that's going up. That means that this is facing that way slightly. Oh, that's close enough. That'll do that. Now I'm going to lower it down again and bring it forwards a bit. It won't get any flatter on the top, so we're just going to try and conform it with this. Doesn't need to be the flattest thing in the world, I don't think. I'm going to get my end mill. This is another one that came with it. It's probably not the best, but whatever. Pop the end mill in. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't got a foggiest. Right, so now we're just going to take a uniform amount, not much. We're just going to make sure it's all flat on the top, basically. I'm going to do that now. Surprises me about this kind of milling machine stuff. Well, metalwork in general, I've never really done it when I was younger. It wasn't really my thing. I was into wood because it was easier. But the sheer amount of preparation, and the more that you prepare and make sure it's right, the better the result. Like the actual function of milling to me strikes me as the quick bit. This is the easy bit. It's all of the bit beforehand of making sure it's all straight and stuff. It's pretty mad. Oh, it's so smooth. That's amazing. Like a baby's bum. What's gonna happen with this? It might go completely wrong. I might fly out later in the video and I might not have a piece and I might have wasted £30 on this, or however much money I've wasted on this and the time. But this is so like therapeutic. I don't know whether I'm supposed to be using cooling, like WD-40 or something. Am I supposed to be spraying stuff on it? I don't even know. It's part of the reason that I'm doing this YouTube channel stuff. So if I'm doing something drastically wrong, oh, you better, you're sure, your bottom dollar, somebody's gonna let me know. Somebody's gonna let me know. But it's about rooting between the comments that are actually valid and the ones that are by a drunk person at 1 o'clock in the morning kind of jobby. Now bear in mind, I have not bought any tooling for this, so I'm literally just using what came with the milling machine. There's probably a way better machine to do this, but I haven't bought anything, like I said. Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that. That's amazing. That's so smooth. That feels so nice. That is awesome. That is absolutely awesome. Come on, with this milling machine has been probably battered and beaten for its whole life. I mean, the fact that you can get that is quite fantastic. Right, let's quickly clean up Tin Man's pubes. I'm looking for another vacuum cleaner to be able to use to clean up the swarf so I can recycle it when I inevitably get into melting metal. Sorry, I don't know when the microphone ran out of batteries there, but what I'm going to do now is I'm basically going to make a pretty pattern in the middle. I've always dreamt of this. When you get the opportunity to do this, you may as well make a pointless pattern on the inside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. In the middle. Oh yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Go faster, stripes. Obviously, I've pulled the tool out there at that point, so you can see that circle, but whatever, who cares. Next, we're going to drill some holes. We're not going to go the full size because we're going to actually use them to be able to machine another part of it later on. And we also don't need to go the whole way down because we're taking a lot of this metal around the back off. So we just need to get... So, got to work out how deep we're going actually.
Now we're going to get the vise out that came with the milling machine. This is another thing that we need to make sure is all straight. Whenever you change anything over, you need to whack out a dial to just see if it's all straight to the machine, because if it's slightly wonky, then you're going to end up with slightly wonky cuts, and you don't want that, do you? So now it's all nice and parallel, like I said, with the preparation. We're going to take some of the metal off the top to make it nice and smooth and flat with the rest of the machine. Ooh, lovely. Smooth. And then we're going to drill some holes and we're going to tap them later on. So this is where it's actually going to bolt into the car from the top. So yeah, that's me doing some drilling, having a little peek. So yeah, that's the end of the most important dimensions. The rest of them can sort of be up to artistic interpretation. The next bit we're going to do is take all of the chunk of meat from the back that we don't need. I use this as an opportunity to be able to really learn kind of like what is possible with this milling machine, how much metal I can take off at any one time. I tried a few different things like plunge milling, which is where you just go straight down and just take the metal out. And then there's also conventional milling and climb milling. This is where you're moving the part in relation to the spinning bit, which if you're moving it against the spinning motion, it is called conventional milling, which gives you a much more controllable cut. But climb milling, which is where you risk the mill actually running like a wheel across the piece and digging into it, that's climb milling, and it's only used in very small instances. So right now I found the best method of you doing it was spinning it around in circles circles like a CNC machine would. And I was just pretending to be G-code. I am the human G-code. So this is me taking the final pass, and then this is a light pass just to kind of give it a nice big gold clean. And, you know, if you look at that, it's turning out really nice and clean. This was about an hour, though, of chopping all of that metal out. And yes, more of this billet is now on the floor than on the part. So after a little bit of fiddling here and there and making sure everything was exact and both sides were symmetrical, yeah, we were able to jump onto the next piece. It was a very good learning curve because I got to learn the difference between climb milling, conventional milling, and basically what the limits are for this milling machine and its really relatively rubbish motor, which I may update in the future. Who knows? The next thing I tried doing, because I was sitting there wondering what I could possibly do pretending to be a CNC machine, I figured, you know, CNC machines make gradients, and there's no reason why I can't be the human G-code in this instance. So you just go forwards and upwards in an exact set of steps, and you end up making a sort of very high resolution step. The smaller the steps, the smoother it is going to be. My calculations didn't end up exactly right. I thought this kind of step gradient was going to end up going right to the bottom of the piece, but I must have messed up with my calculations. But it's all in a day's work, all a bit of experimentation and fun, because it isn't the most important part, and we're actually going to be doing this part again later in the video. Also, the use of the paintbrush after is a really rewarding thing, to be able to clean up and see the shine. I ended up just taking off more and more bits of metal, just whittling away at this piece of aluminium until I was left with what I thought was going to be just the right amount of stuff.
Here we go. Annoyingly, last minute, I knew I shouldn't have done it. I added a radius, which is the curvy bit. It's kind of difficult to do it. I did it in a bit of a bodgy way, and it showed me how it can easily go wrong, because when doing the radius, it span around, it kind of just got a bit bogged down, and it made a little bit of a chunk here. Not this big, but I tried to take a little bit out to make it look purposeful. So we're going to have to figure out something that sticks out there. But all in all, I mean, it's not that bad. My favorite bit is that gradient at the back. It doesn't need to look like this. Weirdly enough, it weighs a sort of similar amount. And also, sod's law, the second I finished it, the face mill that I ordered turned up, so that might have speeded up some of the cuts a little bit here and there. It's basically a larger version of an end mill that basically just takes big face cuts. It doesn't go quite as deep, but it goes very snazzy. But I'll pop that there and try not to damage it. I think I'm still actually going to modify this and make it quite a bit smaller, because I've completely overbuilt it. But for now, let's plop it on and see what we need to do. By the way, also since doing this, I have kind of cleaned up and painted the arms. I've also made some go faster holes in it, of course. So we're going to have it sitting about here. So we're going to have the linkages sticking up like this, so it maintains that kind of shape. I was going to cut it down to make it shorter, but it's kind of cool. It's kind of like a bit of a statement piece, like a front grille thing. It's kind of funny. Actually, the more I think about it, I think I am going to take it all the way up here and bring it up a little bit, because it is lowered. We can get away with it. That will get rid of this. We're going to go straight. We're not going to bother with the contours anymore. We're just going to lose this bottom one. So we're going to basically just cut the whole bottom area of it off and put another hole up here. So there will be these holes, but you won't see them because we'll get that like that. I think that's what we're going to do. Yeah. Screw it, let's do it. It was a fun exercise, but I've completely overbuilt the blooming thing. Like, yeah, in nearly every dimension, it is basically oversized. And yeah, I could have probably gone from a smaller bit of metal. But honestly, there's something a little bit therapeutic about it. It feels like you're in a submarine in World War I or something like that. And also, I've learned some very important lessons. It's quite nice coming in with the mindset of G-code and tool paths that are for CNC machines, but literally doing it on a mill. It's like cosplaying a robot. Here we go. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bottom off it and just see where we go from there. Your hands should be perfectly adequate to do most things. And, you know, it would make sense if I was doing this every day, but I'm not. I'm just doing it on and off. So
this shot is an example of when I got confused and lost my bearing, and I thought I was doing conventional milling, but right now it's climb milling. Climb milling is better when you've got a light cut because it gives a better finish. But if you've got deep cuts, you really want to do it the other way. So in the next shot, I'm doing conventional milling. You can take more meat off and have much more control of the piece whilst you're spinning those handles, and it gives less risk of it kind of running out of control and also biting into the part.
We could take quite a bit of this off. We're going to end up with nothing. There's something quite nice about just chipping away at a bit of aluminium. But look at it. What a beauty.
I ended up doing the gradient again because I wasn't happy with my calculation last time and it ended too short. It was too shallow. So here's me doing it slightly differently with a slightly different amount of turns forwards and upwards to give a lovely staircase. Wonderful, absolutely beautiful. And this ends up right at the bottom. Ah, finally, it worked out nicely.
Nice, very nice. If there is any dimensions we need to get right, it's actually the flatness of this when we shave it down. So we need to get it flatter onto the bed.
We don't want to cut into the top bit of the metal, so I used a bit of paper to kind of figure out when it was at that point where it was just before touching. When it's just before touching, it pulls the bit of paper out of your hand without pulling you into the spinning bit. It's a used traditional method, I've heard. So we're going to take a bit more meat off this and we'll be well away to getting it onto the car. This is us putting a hole in higher so it can attach higher onto the car. We're actually going to reuse the holes at the bottom to hold the bronze spinning discs in place. You'll see what those are later on in the video. It'll be a lot more obvious, but look at that. Whoa.
The next thing we need to look at is the bits of metal that actually connect it to the rest of the car. It's these things, linkages? Linkages? I'm going to call them linkages. I can't remember exactly what they are. So basically, for more articulation, you can usually get longer ones. In fact, you could still get brand new longer ones, like this one, but unfortunately sold out. They look very fancy. They look like they're made from billet. So I figured we may as well machine these as well. I've got these 2 lumps of aluminium right here, completely oversized. Started off with the Rapidor, chopped this off, and then had a spurious time trying to split it in half. Could technically actually get both of them out of this single piece, but we've got a really small amount of metal in between to have a bit of leeway. So I'm going to be machining them separately out of 2 bits. So the next interesting challenge for me is to see if I can actually make 2 things that are exactly the same. So 3D Etch a Sketch time. Let's see what we got. So the first thing we're going to do is get these both to be basically the same size. We're going to plump it into the vise and we're going to kind of clean up this rough edge that I used to cut.
This might have been a snazzy time to use that nice new face mill, the larger version of the end mill, but I didn't want to risk it. I would rather do that on something I was experimenting with because it did take me a long time to cut this bit of metal in half. So I'm using the end mill and we're doing it nice and slowly because it's just, you know, what I know.
Now we've got 2 that are nice and equal, but they're not the same depth. This one's slightly thinner than that. That's just because I've just been making them flat. Now we're going to make them the right width. Now the bottom of it is flat, we're going to take the top off so we can make this 25 millimeters wide. I don't know how much we need to take off. About 3 millimeters off of the top of this.
So when I started off taking lots of metal and doing big cuts, I pretended to be the CNC machine, basically going around in circles, which means the edge that is spinning is always conventionally milling. Then when we're doing the final pass, I'm going 1 conventional and then going back climb mill and then conventional and climb mill, which makes a really soft finish. And I really like the patination on the top of it. It looks really nice.
Bang on. So we need to sort of like figure out what width we're going to do. We're going to do it a bit wider than this so we can have the holes a bit bigger. So this right now, that's 30. I'm going to go for 35. Right now we're at 60, so to get down to 35 it's going to be a fair bit of chunking, but luckily it's not a big dimension. So let's take a bit off the top and then take a bit off the bottom whilst measuring and we'll be well away. Right, take it out, add some parallels to hold it up and take the remainder off the bottom. We're at 43 right now, so not that far. This is when a DRO, a digital readout, would become in handy, but that'll all come in time. So we're making some deep cuts. Bang on 35 mil. Now I have 2 bars that are exactly the bloody same. They're the same blooming bar. So now what we need to do is work out how long we need to make these. I mean, I think I think it's just the longer, the more articulation fudge knows, but obviously can't have them this long, and I think that's a little bit excessive. So now we're going to take the top of them off. I think I'm going to make them 90 millimeters. So we still need to take a fair chunk off one side of each of them. So let's do that. Get it down to 90. And from within, 2 exact chunks that we can work from. So next thing I think we're going to do is work out the size of the hole that we need to make and go from there. So I've got rubber bushings. These are going to sit inside. Funnily enough, these are sort of ovaled, but that's quite a good fit actually. So what's the size of this hole? What's the size of this hole? Well, let's find out. Just under 20 millimeters. Okay, okay. First with a nice and shiny pilot hole. Getting right up in there with some WD-40. Get it all the way through. Right, and in we go. All the way through. Oh baby. Just doing it bit by bit because it does take a lot of power out of this crappy motor. Beautiful. Hey! Yeah, look at that. They're going to squeeze in nicely. Cool. So now we've got both of them looking like this. I think the next thing to do is actually make a little pattern in the middle because we may as well. So I'm going to get the mill back on here and do a little bit of a like you know, a go faster pattern in the middle of it. There we go. The next thing we're going to do is the radius. I did this wrong the last time. But I feel this needs a radius. They look cool with radiuses, so I'm going to try it. Right, so the problem is I don't have a rod that is the same width as the hole. This is like one way of doing a radius that seems quite an easy kind of method of doing it. We used the drill bit that was using it, that holds it like this. First, clamp it up flat, no parallels, nothing like that. And then we bring it up. So it's just touching. We don't mess with the height now. We go backwards and forwards. So we've got a first cut. We get a hammer. I guess we could actually start with a hammer, to be honest. So now we just kind of pull it out of the side. We open it a little bit. Push it down a tiny bit. Obviously being careful. And go again. And we'll start seeing a radius form around the hole. Work around the drill bit. And you end up with a nice radius. Just go backwards and forwards, but don't mess with the up and down geometry, or you'll end up with a wonky radius. Don't ask me how I know. Alright, so just keep on doing this. I'm just doing it until it's a radius, basically. Just keeping it well out of the way. Being mindful of the spinning thing that is only a little bit of a way away. It's coming along, and little by little, you end up making a radius. The more small the movements, the less kind of like stepping there is, but you can kind of file it out, I think, from what I have heard. Absolutely lovely. So initially I was going to actually put bushes in here, but if you look at the original one, you'll see that the hole is actually oversized. So it's not actually holding it in place. All it's doing is holding the bushing in place with a bit of an extra circular bit out there. So what I've done is I've plonked a couple of these extra circular bits that we're going to be screwing on using some M3 screws. Tying a bit of Loctite as well.
In hindsight, these might have been better as bronze, but they're not moving parts. They're only locating the bronze separation discs. These things right here. I got some new ones from the Austin7 workshop.co.uk, £3.50 each. So I got 4 of those for the inside, and then using used ones on the outside. They're going to be held in place by those holes that are already there. But we got the friction discs on there. We're also going to put some on the back, but I found I made a boo-boo in the measurements, and you can see here that I've made the top kind of strengthening part a little bit too thick, so we need to get back to the 3D Etch-a-Sketch machine and take a bit more metal off.
Oh, this is so annoying. There we go. Nice. Nice.
Another thing I got from the Austin7 workshop.co.uk were these fine thread bolts made for this application. They're fine thread because the adjustments between really firm and really soft are right at the end of the travel, so it's nice to have more twists. Fine threads mean you twist for more twisties. And then I've also got these beach ones, which are actually not made for the Austin7. They're made for Hartford friction dampers, but they do a perfectly good job, and they're the same size. The springs are from my bits box. They were just sprayed. So I also had to modify these with a bit more offset. So we used some washers, welded them in, so we got a bit more space to play with, and they will hold the separator discs on that side. So we go with friction disc, and then we go separator disc on that side as well, and then plonk it in. So there's nothing touching nothing. You'll see that the outside separator discs are used and old. That's because they seemed perfectly fine. I just didn't have enough for all of them. So you can get brand new springs as well from the Austin7 workshop as well, but I didn't need those. So this is me plonking it all together. It was a little fiddly to make sure it all sat in place just right, and everything was seated right, because if you tighten it up and let's say it's all a little offset, then you end up breaking bits. So get it all in, give it a good old tight, and give it a test, and then you find out how well they work. Friction versus stiction. So you want the friction, but you want it to kind of move smoothly. You don't want it to stick with a bit of stiction and then jump. That means it'll be a really bad damper, and that's why you use this oiled beach to be able to have as little stiction as possible, but with as much friction as possible, if you get my drift. Now we can go and get the links, the drop links from the other side. They now have the rubber bushings inside. Bushings. I got told off in the comments for saying that before. So now we're going to grease them nice and greasy. Get them all tightened in there with some new bolts, looking nice and dandy.
Yeah, it's nice and smooth. Basically, it's just something to add friction to it. Oh, you can't see it, but yeah, it's all nice and in line. It's staying together. It's working as the other one should. It works as a double one should. Some of you may think that billet might not be the best thing to use for this because it's not very flexible and things like that. But the thing is this isn't a high load part. None of it's touching all the moving bits because of the brass bushings and things like that. And all of the flex is taken out by these arms anyways. And that's why I thought it would be a good contender for a billet project, because now you've got a funky looking bit with some grills. You couldn't get that on the steel. I think it's pretty cool. I'm really pleased with that. So let's put it on the car and yeah, see if it, well, I guess we can't test it until we get on to the next step, but let's pop it on the car anyway. So the thing is they're usually facing downwards like this. So when the suspension's pushed up, these go like whoop, these go whoop. But I mean, I don't see why they can't be facing downwards. It seems to be the same. Maybe there isn't. Maybe there's a reason that they're that way around. I've seen them this way around as well, but more of them the other way around. I don't think it makes much of a difference from, in my mind's eye, having it like that. So it pushes up, it feels like there's more to go. So I'm gonna do it from here. If it's not right, and there's a reason why they're facing, the links are facing downwards instead of upwards, then I will change it. But for now, I'm gonna roll with it. Cool. Edit, bit of a quick addition to this video, by the way. So I posted a picture of this just to see if I did anything silly on the Austin 7 Specials Facebook group last night. There's a couple of tiny face palms on my part, but also other things that are affirming my ideas, which make me feel quite confident that this is actually a functioning idea. One of the posters, called Colin, mentioned that in the 750 book, I haven't read it, the most effective these work is when they're parallel. So obviously these aren't parallel right now, and they're not even parallel originally. So I think they'll do the job as they are, but we'll see, because when we get onto the brakes, this can actually be mounted onto this point. So then they're parallel. So that's an idea. Also mentioned was the fact of friction pads made from PTFE material is marginally better for stiction versus friction than the beach. But I'm going to stick with the beach because, you know, it's been tried and tested and I've already got them and they were £8 each. So this central friction damper was a perfect example of something I thought would be nice and easy and I'd get it done in the space of a day or so, and it ended up taking a couple of weeks. So let us know below, would you have done it differently? Would you have even used telescopic dampers or the rotor flows, which we may use on the back? What should we use on the back? Should we go for friction dampers or those nice gooey unvulcanized rubber ones on the back? The next step is going to be tackling the front hydraulic brakes. I've already talked about the plan and all of the process of that over on Patreon, and I'll be updating how that goes over the next couple of weeks on there before the video goes up over here, because Patreon, needless to say, massively helps make these videos and put them together and stuff. Simply wouldn't be possible without the kind support on there, so thank you very much. And yeah, until next time, I'm Sam and this is the Aussie 7, and remember, don't be scared to try it. Maybe just stick to steel and an angle grinder for this kind of thing though.
Gets a cheap and rough 100-year-old Facebook Marketplace milling machine, they said. They said it would be really easy to use, they said. They said it would be really nice and quick to make things, they said. They said it would be really easy to set it up and make sure it's all straight, they said. They said that you didn't have to wiggle your arms for pretty much the whole day to make the most mundane piece of bracketry for a vehicle, they said. They said it doesn't coat the bottom of your socks in really sharp shards of aluminium, they said. They said it didn't take ages to clean up from everything, they said. They said even if you make a slight mistake, it's still sort of useful, they said. They said it would look more classy than just using steel and an angle grinder, they said. They said.